morning to all of you. Thanks Sangam Talks for giving me an opportunity to share my views about my first and recently launched book, Aurangzeb. So now one may wonder what is the actual need for a new book on Aurangzeb? Means there are many books already written on the reign of Aurangzeb or on a different aspects. There are contemporary chronicles also available as well as modern histories. Like if you say on contemporary chronicles, we have story of Niccolo Manusci, then travels in Mughal India of Bernier and Tavernier. These are all European chronicles, by the way. And then we have a Mughal historical like Muntakal al-Lubab of Khafi Khan, then Masir Alamgiri of Saki Musted Khan, Futuhat Alamgiri like Ishwar Das Nagar, right? So these are the books which are mostly contemporary chronicles. Now there is a very massive project by Sir Jaduna Sarkar, who has written 5 volumes on Aurangzeb. That was like a benchmark for gauging the reign of Aurangzeb. And next is the recent discourse. So coming to the recent discourse, there is a mindset that Aurangzeb is much misunderstood king because of some communal historians in the post-independence or pre-independence era. And much of the academia currently has gone to great length, or in fact absurd length, to gloss over or even defend some of the actions of Aurangzeb. A phenomenon which is widely known as historical negationism, which differs significantly from historical revisionism, or known as, normally a historical revisionism is known as the new information placing in the current context, but negationism is absolute denial of whatever happened with some trivial facts and then glossing over the brutal part of that particular king. So like for example, Aurangzeb ruled for 50 years. He has many Hindu nobles in his kingdom. He protected more temples than he demolished. These are some of the absurd allegations, absurd like viewpoints, which are getting pushed right now through academia, print, and media. So that is the basic reason I actually went for this particular in writing for particular book. So consider a narrative like this gentleman. His name is Peter William Botha. He was Prime Minister of South Africa and then President of South Africa from 1978 to 1989. So that was the part when South Africa was under apartheid regime. So to clear what is the difference between historical revisionism and negationism, I'll give this example. Like if someone says that more black troops were recruited in South African defense forces under this person Botha than any of the previous presidents. Why? Because till 1984 there were no black officers. The first 2 blacks were commissioned as lieutenant in 1984. But will this data be used to hide the fact that Botha was running one of the racist government and discriminatory government in South Africa, where blacks had 0 political representation? This one, of course, needs no introduction, but you will be surprised to know that this book, Lives of Hitler's Jewish Soldiers, claims that there are more than 1.5 lakh soldiers who are of either of Jewish origin or are part Jewish in their ancestry, fought for Hitler in World War II. So there are like Erhard Milch, who is risen to Field Marshal. Then there is General Helmut Wilberg. So there are multiple personalities who are suspected of Jewish origin, but then even after what is the treatment of Jews in the Hitler's Germany, they fought for the Wehrmacht or Nazi war machine. So can we use such kind of frivolous data to conclude that the treatment of Hitler in treatment of Jews in Nazi Germany is good, or they are getting more humanly treated? So Basically, what this is a European Parliamentary Research Service definition given in January 2022 that even if an impartial historical research, if it is tend to deny the anti-Semitism, it will be a problem for the person who is doing that. And there are like the jail term will be even from a week or to even up to 5 years. But what happens exactly in India is exactly opposite. So these are some of the nuggets which I'm sharing. An academic shroud over negationism. So like Aurangzeb protected more temples than he demolished. He has no religious litmus test for his employment. He remitted 80 taxes on the population. Hindu support to Dara and Aurangzeb was really equal. He was really benevolent to donate land to Hindu Gosais or Jains at Shatrunjaya and jizya, temple destruction, you name it. So in this book, the particular focus is not exactly on Aurangzeb, but particularly on this phenomenon, that is whitewashing. Whatever the discourse which currently is gaining traction, which I feel that is a whitewashing, I try to deconstruct that particular narrative with the help of contemporary sources. Now it is very difficult for a person who is from actually a non-historical background to write on a historical field, but that is the kind of thing which you learn through your reading and then mastery of your primary and secondary sources. So even if just I will give an example of how to compare primary versus secondary. So this is a screenshot of History of Aurangzeb by Sir Jaduna Sarkar, Volume 5. And it claims that Chhatrasal, Maharaja Chhatrasal, came back from Maratha court disappointed. Now, I don't know how Jaduna Sarkar got this impression, but if you look at the contemporary source known as Chhatra Prakash, it is written by Lal Kavi, who was a court poet of Chhatrasal. So here it is clear. It is clearly mentioned that Chhatrasal was dispatched to Bundelkhand with due dignity and with the promise of help from Marathas. So even if a historian is renowned, well-known, still if a primary source says something otherwise, we have to go always with the primary source. That is my contention. The next in the line is Mughal Nobles project of Mr. Athar Ali. This is one of the most critical project which Mr. Athar Ali has taken, and on the basis of which this narrative is getting pushed. Like there are more Hindus in the environment of Aurangzeb, or he was more lenient towards his Hindu nobles than his Mughal nobles. But actually nobody had, I don't know, but I feel that nobody has actually checked the primary data which was shared by Athar Ali. Like I will give some few examples which I have when I was studying this particular data. So we know Netaji Palkar, who was a commander-in-chief of Maratha forces and which was captured by Mirza Raja Jai Singh and sent to Agra in 1666, where he was converted. This is the entry number 50 on the screen. Netoji, who has now converted to Muhammad Quli Khan. But in his project, he has shown as Maratha only. And the most hilarious part is, if you look at entry number 379, it is Kondaji, the uncle of Netoji Palkar. He was also converted along with Netoji. But two persons from the same family are classified in two different categories. One, if you check Netoji, he is classified as Maratha, and Kondaji, his uncle, is classified as Deccani. So even the base data on which there are assumptions made about the representation of Hindu nobles needs actual and very careful further research. There is one more example, like line number 454. This Raja Bakht Buland or Dindar Khan. Actually, these are two different persons who are handling the throne of Devgad on two different times. but here they are put together under a single name. So the data, which even if it is shared by a renowned historian, has to be checked, authenticated, ascertained, and then only used. So for my project, I have used the same data, but I have used certain modifications and then used that particular data. The next and most fundamental problem with Aurangzeb, or the whitewashing of Aurangzeb, was his court records, because he has left copious amount of first-hand records in which he or his court chronicles gloat about his anti-Hindu bigotry. Then there are primary records like another contemporary chronicles. Then there are records like preserved by Khafi Khan, who are actually the Mughal nobles in those particular era. So this is a historical negationism in Indian context. So how to target this particular resources, such as memoirs, court chronicles? So basically, this is like a dismissal. These are written broadly on recollection, or they are dependent on memory, which has, or the events have happened decades earlier, and the records were written after much time has elapsed. The second theme is dismiss them wholly as an exaggerated account of events. The next one is more tricky, like situation reports, imperial firmans. So neutralization of this source takes place with a statutory warning that relying on them will be misleading, as many of the orders were never carried out. But can we take this excuse on a face value that many of these orders were never carried out? I don't think so. Then the next charge is many of the records were mistranslated by British era historians to show Islamic kings in poor light as compared with the current British rule. And the last charge is some of the communal or self-made historians who lacked historical rigor were responsible for showing a distorted image of these kings due to their vested interest. So I thought it is better to share what Sir Jadunath has written on Masir-e-Alamgiri. That Masir-e-Alamgiri, which is a primary source for Aurangzeb's reign, is written by Saki Mustad Khan with the help of state archives, and completed within 3 years of Aurangzeb's death. So it is very like a basic thing to understand that many of the court records which were accessible to him but may have lost over time. So this will be the kind of most complete or authentic account. Of course, it may not cover everything because it is not practically possible, but you will get definitely a fair amount of certainty that whatever is recorded in Masir-e-Alamgiri has happened at that particular point of time. So we'll come to some of the charges which are shown in my book. Like we'll start with the Hindu support to Dara and Aurangzeb during the War of Succession. So there is a theme that a historian claims that Dara and Aurangzeb got equal support from Hindus during the particular War of Succession, whereas 24 nobles supported Dara and 21 to Aurangzeb. But the trickiest part is relying only on those particular numbers without checking the percentage. So this is the religious composition of respective armies. Dara got 28% support of Hindu nobles as compared to 17% by Aurangzeb. So that is basically a comparison from the original sources. And why this is important? Because this is support of Muslim nobles. Now, we know that Dara was appointed heir apparent or the next in line king by Shah Jahan in 1658. But Aurangzeb got more support, that is 55.7% nobles supported Aurangzeb and only 34% nobles supported Dara. Why? That is a critical question. And therein the answer lies in the overall Aurangzeb's leaning towards Islamic philosophy. The next in line is when someone says like there are 30% Hindu nobles in Mughal army. But then what is the situation in administrative position? So my study states that there are total 171 persons who have were present on these particular positions like Wazir or Diwan-e-Kul, then Mir Bakshi, Mir Atish, Mir Tuzuk, Diwani Bhuitar. But there is only a single Hindu noble, Raja Raghunath, was present as a Wazir or Diwan-e-Kul, and that percentage is 0.58%. So this statistics is never shared. I don't know why, but I feel this is the most important statistics. When somebody is saying that 31% Hindu nobles were present in Aurangzeb's army, but doesn't share this statistics, that in top administrative positions there are only 0.60%, 0.6% of Hindu nobles, then we started feeling that something is not particularly right about the discourse which is going on. So next we'll come to some individual nobles like Raja Raghunath. Many of the chroniclers in historical as well as modern has written about Raja Raghunath. But do we know that Raja Raghunath was appointed deputy wazir in the reign of Shah Jahan itself in 1656? And after the war of succession, when Aurangzeb took over from Shah Jahan and Raja Raghunath pledged his loyalty to Aurangzeb, then only he was allowed to continue in his position of deputy wazir. But if you look at the data of Mughal nobles, he was still the lowest ranking person with his rank of 3000 to hold such an important position. Now, next is Mirza Raja Jai Singh and Maharaja Jaswant Singh. So Athar Ali, in his project called Causes of Rathore Rebellion, has argued that Mirza Raja Jai Singh or Maharaja Jaswant Singh both got promoted under Aurangzeb and hold a higher mansab of 7,000 as a rank. But the reality is completely different. If you check the Masirul Umrah, in case of Jaswant Singh and Jodhpur Hukumatri Bahi, it clearly confirms that Maharaja Jaswant Singh was promoted to 7,000 rank in the early 1658 on the recommendation of Dara Shikoh, when he was deputed against Aurangzeb. Similarly, Mirza Raja Jai Singh was promoted to 7,000 rank when he was deputed against Shah Shuja in the early 1658. So even if the data is shared by a prominent historian, checking with the primary sources is still mandatory as far as I am concerned. Now coming to this fable of removal of 80 taxes. Many people are actually sharing this particular data without realizing what is meant by removal of 80 taxes and where this fable actually comes from. I can share that this particular fable comes from a letter written by Aurangzeb to Shah Suleiman of Persia. So Aurangzeb has written in his own records that I have removed 80 taxes. But what is the actual or reality of the removal of those 80 taxes? So Khafi Khan, who has written Muntakab-ul-Lubab, has particularly noted that removal of those particular taxes has been observed only at provincial capitals, and that too infrequently. The collection in the rest of the area went as planned and the orders remained on paper only. And what if somebody complains to the fief Aurangzeb about such fief holders who are particularly collecting such taxes? So either they were temporarily suspended or they were given mild reprimand due to a powerful patron at the court. So what is the end result? Actually, removal of 80 taxes has no particular significance as far as the common people are concerned, because taxes like Rahdari, Zakat, etc. were collected as usual from all of it. I will show an example. There is an interesting epigraph which shows collection of Zakat, which is normally taken from particularly from Muslims. But this particular epigraph, which was found in Shahabad and given in Epigraphia Indica of 1968-69, line number 11 particularly shows that zakat was collected before it came to notice of Aurangzeb. And in 1679, when jizya was reintroduced by Aurangzeb, the people had to petition that, sir, we can't pay both zakat as well as jizya, so either give relief from one of the tax. So zakat was taken out of context, taken after that particular number of taxes in play, and in that place jizya was introduced for Hindu population. And this is one of the neglected part of that epigraphic part, which is the most complete record and authentic, are not particularly accessed while writing such history. But this particular different information comes into only light when we access these particular sources. So we'll now come to the next and most crucial part, that there are various theories proposed for destruction of temples by eminent historians. Now, what are those particular theories? I will quickly take you through this. This is first and foremost is temple wealth, that many of the invaders were attracted to the particular temple's wealth, like when Mahmud attacked Somnath Mandir. He was more due to its financial constraint than its religious constraint. But if you actually look at the records of Mahmud of Ghazni, he particularly he was offered to spare the idol, and then in place he will get more money. But he says, no, I will break the idol and will be called as idol breaker in place of idol seller. So this particular point, I don't know why they are keep pushing that temple wealth was the major reason rather than religious constraint. Then there is next point is destruction of temples at specific places after such some inquiries. This theory was put forward by Richard Eaton, that people has to conduct some inquiry before demolishing certain temples, where some activities which are contrary to the Aurangzeb's reign were taking place. But I have not accessed a single inquiry report in multiple Akbars or contemporary chronicles while writing this particular book, which mentions that any inquiry was conducted before demolishing a temple. Then there is political resistance theory. It was again proposed by Professor Eaton. Then teaching of false books and dubious practices to Muslims. But I don't understand why the temples and religious schools has to be demolished if they're teaching some false books or dubious practices to Muslims. And why not send an order prohibiting the enrollment of Muslim students rather than demolishing the places of worships or religious schools? This is one more theory, that temple in northern part of India were demolished because they gave certain assistance to Chhatrapati Shivaji after his escape from Agra in 1666. And the last and particular point is, so what? Even Hindu kings used to attack and destroy each other's temples. So I'm not be able to cover every point in this particular slide, but I will definitely cover some important points. Now, the most important part, Aurangzeb was called Shahzada Deen Pana, which means prince who was defender of faith. Normally, there is a proverb that whenever a person, what he will do can be gauged from what he has done in his youth or a child. So, if you look at the record of Aurangzeb, what he did in his youth, so there is a record in Mirat-e-Ahmadi in which the temple of Chintamani at Ahmedabad was demolished on Aurangzeb's order, and a masjid was erected in its place. It was named as Quwwatul Islam. That happened in 1645. Thevenot, a contemporary traveler, actually records that cows were slaughtered in that particular temple because after slaughtering of cows, Hindus, as per their laws, could not worship in that particular place. Now, this is a particular inquiry I have found that Dara has intervened in this particular episode, and Shah Jahan has to give back that temple to the Shantidas jeweler who has built this particular temple. But it was demolished again after Aurangzeb took throne in 1658. Now the next temple is next incidents happened in 1657, where Aurangzeb demolished the temple of Khanderai near Aurangabad. So these are the steps he has taken even before he has assumed the throne. Now people have started pushing something known as Banaras Farman. A Banaras Farman is contains such lines like temple should not be demolished or Brahmins should not be harassed. But nobody means anybody should analyze such farmans critically before coming to a conclusion. So here I have tried in my book to analyze the circumstances when this particular farman was issued. So the date is particularly important. It was issued on 28th February 1659. Why this particular date is important? Because War of Succession was at peak. This particular farman was issued immediately after the Battle of Khajua, which was happened between Aurangzeb and Shah Shuja. But Shah Shuja was defeated in this particular battle. Still, he was looked as a threat on the eastern side of Mughal Empire. The contest for Peacock Throne was still open because Dara Shikoh was marshalling his forces in Ahmedabad, and he was trying to gather Rajputs to his side. Now comes interesting part, that why particularly Banaras? So this is one of the reasons that Mirza Raja Jai Singh was a chief patron of many temples and religious schools at Kashi. So demolishing those temples or harming those gurukuls at this particular time would have definitely pushed Hindu nobles towards the side of Dara. So to placate these Hindu nobles, Aurangzeb had to keep his mission aside for some time and issue farmans like this, which were flouted the moment he considered his throne was secured from internal rebellions. And what was the end result of this particular farman? That Dara was left by all his allies, including Maharaja Jaswant Singh, and he was defeated in the Battle of Devrai, which happened in April 1659. So Banaras Farman has no particular significance apart from a temporary arrangement which Aurangzeb has to do to secure his throne, as this particular research is concerned. Because the next in the line is Farman issued in November 1665, where many of the temples in Gujarat were demolished in 1659 itself. If you can check, the temples were demolished in the year of accession, which is 1658-59. So for Gujarat, Aurangzeb even not stopped till 1669 to issue orders for demolition of temples. This is the Persian Akbar about Keshav temple at Mathura, dated 13 October 1666, and which confirms that Aurangzeb knew about Dara's donation to Keshav temple at Mathura in 1666 itself. But still in 1669, it was used as a pretext that Dara has donated something, a kathada to Keshav temple, and this pretext was used to first push them into a corner and then demolish that particular temple in 1670. This is a copy of General Order for Temple Destruction in April 1669. This particular copy is given in Masir-e-Alamgiri, and you can refer in that particular book. So coming back to Keshav temple or any of the temples, these were all happened after this particular order was issued in April 1669. Kashi Vishwanath was demolished in September 1669. Keshav in January 1670. So whenever some argues that this particular order was constrained to certain places like Banaras, Thatta, or Multan. That is a actual theory by Professor Eaton. So these are the testimonies of European travelers as far as Hooghly, Surat, and William Norris, who was the English ambassador to the court of Aurangzeb in 1700. So if this particular order was confined to a certain area like Banaras or Multan, then persons like De Graaf, who was placed on Hooghly, then this East India Company official known as Gary, both have got this particular order in Hooghly as well as Surat. William Norris, who has traveled from Surat to Panhala, or a distance of around say 700 kilometers, has noted that there is no temple of any consequence, or that means a big temple is standing currently, and the Mughal has taken great care not to leave the smallest trace of idolatry in this particular country. So these testimonies can't be just ignored because modern interpreters feel that no, the orders were not interpreted properly, or this particular orders needs to be carefully screened before coming to a conclusion. Now, this is the very interesting theory known as political resistance theory. So what this particular theory says, that the temples were demolished because the patrons of those particular temples politically resisted Aurangzeb. How hollow this particular theory is, which can be proved with the following example. This is during the Mughal Rajput War, and this particular entry is from Masiri Alamgiri, which reads that Abu Turab was sent to demolish temples of Amber, that is the kingdom of Jaipur right now, reported to the court on Tuesday 10th August 1680, and reported that he has pulled down 66 temples. In March 1681, orders were sent to demolish Jagdish temple, which is again in the territory of Jaipur, and the task was completed. The confirmation received on 14 May 1681. Now, this action, doesn't it sound very strange that if a theory is put forward that temples were demolished because there was political resistance to Aurangzeb or any of the Mughal or Delhi Sultanate invader, but Kingdom of Amber was not even a participant in Mughal Rajput War. There was no political resistance from Amber in 1680s to Aurangzeb. So it doesn't suit through narrative that the Mughal army goes on rampaging, destroying close to 70 temples in the supposedly friendly territory of Amber. If there is one more example of political resistance theory, that after capture of Bijapur, that was regarding Adil Shah kingdom in September 1686. Aurangzeb entered the Bijapur fort and offered twofold prayers at the mosque of that place. Now compare his behavior with when Aurangzeb captured Maratha forts. So this is a particular instance which states that when Aurangzeb captured Vasantagad in November 1699, he entered the fort, demolished that temple which was present in that fort, and initiated the construction of a mosque. Now, if we apply this particular theory of political resistance, the Sultanate of Bijapur, that is Adil Shahi, and Marathas, both were gave political resistance to Aurangzeb. Then why these particular two treatments to these two particular places where Aurangzeb offers namaz in the Jama Masjid of Bijapur, even though Adil Shah was the political opponent to him, but demolish the temples the moment he captures a Maratha fort. So these are the kind of baseless theories which are getting relentlessly pushed in, and the narrative is getting distorted. then there is a theory that Aurangzeb marched from Rajputana to Deccan in 1680, early 1680. And there were many temples in South and Central India, but Aurangzeb didn't demolish those temples. So somehow it is a testimony to his pragmatism, tolerance, or a secular credentials, whatever you can call it. So the actual reason, this is a Akbar dated 21st September 1681, which clearly orders Jawahar Chand, the chief of Masons, to demolish all the temples en route to Burhanpur from Rajsamudra. So the Akbar is crisp, it is clear, and leaves no room for interpretation that a particular sect or a particular deity or any if the temple is new or old, or a particular temples which are in particular territory has to be spared. No. Whichever the temples, you will find, demolish them. But what actually happened? This is a reply, and it is a very interesting reply from the person who was in charge, dated 13 October 1681. So Kamaruddin Khan replies that demolition can be carried out. But what is the problem? That number of Muslims in this particular area is very less. So the conversion from temple to mosque will have high financial burden. And can we take this particular burden when the Deccan campaign against Marathas, Adil Shahi and Qutub Shahi was looming? So that is the main reason that Aurangzeb spared those temples, because financial position, and not because of he was not particularly interested in demolishing the temples. Then as there are different phases of demolition of temples, this is phase which is least discussed. That is temple demolition in southern part of India. This is a copy of Memoirs of Francois Martin, who was governor at Pondicherry from French East India Company. So he mentions that in September 1689, orders were received that temples in the territory of erstwhile Qutub Shahi Bijapuri kingdom has to be demolished. Now Aurangzeb kept demolition of those temples on hold till Marathas, till Chhatrapati Sambhaji was captured and killed. And then he thought that, oh yes, now Maratha resistance has collapsed. Adil Shahi was taken care of in 1686. Qutub Shahi was finished in 1687. And after the death of Chhatrapati Sambhaji, now Maratha in 1689, now Marathas are finished. Then he sent those orders that in southern part of India, temples has to be demolished. And Martin notes that the nobles from erstwhile Bijapuri Qutub Shahi kingdom, or small independent Nayaks of Karnataka, Tamil Nadu, threw their lot with the Marathas because of this particular order. You will get more details in my book, but here it is just a single summary which I am presenting to you. So what happens actually when a source contradicts the narrative? The normally what happens is when we try and check the source and then change the narrative, but here the narrative is paramount and source is secondary. So when we hear that Somnath was demolished twice in the reign of Aurangzeb, but the theory is put forward that, oh, maybe the first order was not properly carried out. The temple was maybe still standing when the second order was issued. That is actually all lies. This order given in Mirat-e-Ahmadi, which knows destruction of Somnath for the second time in 1703, which notes that the temple was demolished in the year of ascension, that is 1659. But the temple has been rebuilt as the time passes. So it has to be again demolished, and the Hindu devotees has to be expelled from that particular place. This is the Akbar which denotes the translation of order which describes destruction of Vitthal Mandir at Pandharpur in 1st January 1705. Then there are inscriptions at different places, like this inscription is at Bidar, given in Epigraphia Indica of 1927-28, that this particular temple in the province of Zafrabad became mosque in 1671-72. Then next is inscription at Kadapa, which is given in Epigraphia Indica of 1937-38. That Aurangzeb built the mosque and broke the idols in 1693. So these are actually narratives which are pushed without referring to the ground sources or primary sources. The major distortion in this scenario is this particular phrase. Even Hindu kings used to destroy each other's temples. Now, this is a particular study known as temple desecration in pre-modern India by Richard Eaton, which says that the dominant pattern in pre-modern India was looting and carrying of images of state deities. But Hindu kings were used to destroy the royal temples of their adversaries. And he has given an example of Rashtrakuta king Indra III, who illegally destroyed the temple of Kalapriya, which is today known as Kalpi. The temple was patronized by the Pratiharas, which were enemies of Rashtrakuta. But here the most important point is Hindu kings carrying off the deities of their opponents to worship in their own temples, something which is not equal to Islamic king carrying of deities to place them in profane positions like roadside, in the courtyard, destroying it or desecrating it. I don't know how we can compare these two phenomena, or why he's comparing those particular two phenomena as equal. So when I tried to check the authenticity of this particular narrative that Kalapriya temple was destroyed by Hindu kings, there are Google throws several results like war trophies. These are the articles in different but they have origin in single research of Professor Eaton. But when you go and check the primary source of this fable, this is the Cambe plate of which is shared in Epigraphia Indica of volume 7, which says that the courtyard of the temple of Kalapriya was slightly damaged by the elephants in the Rashtrakuta army of Indra III. But that has directly taken as a demolition of temples. That is the primary reason to go check the primary sources rather than interpretation of modern interpreters. This particular phrase is known as Kalapriya Pranganam. It confirms that the courtyard of the temple was damaged and not the actual temple. So after the destruction of temple, the next contested part for Aurangzeb is the land grants. In 1672, Aurangzeb ordered that all the future land grants has to be reserved for Muslims, and whatever land grants we are given to Hindus has to be cancelled. So there is a recent claim that this particular policy like implementation, especially in far areas of the kingdom, like example has been given of Bengal, where it is claimed that Mughal officers gave more land to Hindus after 1672 order than before. But if you check the source, this is the picture. The number of land grants are definitely more because it is 28, but the percentage is only 35.7 as compared to 9 grants received by Muslim charities, but their percentage in total land grant is 64.3%. So highlighting such data that number of land grants are more, of course, as they are 28, but not mentioning the fact that the total percentage is only 35.7. This actually whitewashes the truth that Hindus are definitely definitely discriminated during the Aurangzeb's reign. Now, this is very particularly interesting part about Aurangzeb and the Jogis of Jagbar. There was one article on the internet. I have given that link. You can check that particular article, which says that Aurangzeb, even after the land grant was revoked, Aurangzeb reinstated the Madad-i-Mash or the state help to the particular mutt, and annually the mutt was given revenue of 106 rupees. But if you go and check the source of this particular fable book, which is known as Mughals and the Jogis of Jagbar, the interpretation is completely wrong. In place of when Aurangzeb confiscated all the lands from the mutt in 1672, the land was given back to mutt of Jagbar, not as a Madad-i-Mash, but as a patta or a fixed revenue demand to be paid to the state, which means the mutt was not receiving aid of 106 rupees from Mughal government, but it was paying 106 rupees to Mughal government annually from the land it used to cultivate. And if something remains after 106 rupees are paid to the Mughal government, then only that particular money the mutt was able to collect. So this is a reference I have given, the Mughals and the Jogis of Jagbar, letters 9 and 9a. So even there is basic fact check which is missing while writing articles on history. Whether the writer even doesn't know that whether the amount is given to the mutt or whether the amount is taken from that particular mutt. The next portion is Aurangzeb and the Jain temples at Shatrunjaya. This part is very much highlighted that Aurangzeb had given grants to Jain temples at Shatrunjaya. But in reality, Jain temples at Shatrunjaya were existing way before Islamic kings came to India. So whenever Akbar controlled that particular area of Shatrunjaya, Paritana, etc., the grant was first given in year 1592 to the Jains. There is a contemporary chronicle known as Shatrunjaya Sthadijina Bimba Prashasti, which was composed due to this phenomenon in 1592-93, as Akbar donated a particular land to Shatrunjaya to specific Jain communities. The land grant at Shatrunjaya was reconfirmed by Shah Jahan and in 1629, because there is an inscription at Digambar Mandir at Shatrunjaya which clearly says the name of Shah Jahan as Padshah Shri Shah Jahan. And this is the most interesting part. The Sanad of Shatrunjaya to Shantidas was issued in 1657-58, because the letter, it contains Julus year 31, which means it was issued in the reign of Shah Jahan, because it was 31st year of reign of Shah Jahan in 1658. And this Sanad was confirmed by Murad Baksh on 10th June 1658. He was captured soon afterward on 25th June 1658. And later on, after all this happened, as a ritual, and Shantidas was a very rich merchant whose support was needed during the War of Succession. So Aurangzeb confirmed those particular grants at Shatrunjaya for Jain temples. So just parroting the lines that Aurangzeb gave donated lands to Jain temples is not a good practice. We have to go check the source and reconfirm that whatever has been written is correct or not. So after checking out this particular narrative, the next part is jizya. But before going towards jizya, we have to think that jizya was jizya the only discriminatory policy introduced by Aurangzeb? The answer is certainly no. So we have April 1665 order that octroi should be charged to Muslims 2.5%, whereas Hindus has to pay 5% octroi. Then from garden produce, 20% has to be taken from Hindus, but 16.66% from Muslims. Then April 67, the octroi was completely abolished for Muslim traders, where now Hindus has to pay the 10% in place of 5% of octroi. Then November 1702, Hindus should not appoint Muslims as their servants. So there are host of discriminatory measures. In my book, you will find around 22, 23 such measures which were introduced periodically by Aurangzeb. So there are some myths about jizya. It was levied on zimmis, means those are dependents on Islamic State for their protection in lieu of military service. Certain sections like those who were serving in the Mughal government or Brahmins were exempt from paying jizya. Jizya was primarily levied due to economic than religious reason, and the money collected from jizya was normally used for charitable purpose. But in reality, this is an example that even Mughal government officers used to, if they are Hindu, they were supposed to pay jizya. This is the record from Akbar of May 1694, which states that Murlidhar, who is a Diwan of Shahiste Khan, sent a message to Qazi that since he was on a guard duty of Shahiste Khan's palace, he can't come and pay jizya in person. And that was one of the prerequisites of jizya, that the person has to come barefoot. Even if he is of having high status, he can't come in on any using any vehicle like elephant, horse, or palaki, and he has to come barefoot, and he has to come in person. You can't depute a person to pay jizya for you. So since he was placed at Shahista Khan's palace on a guard duty, he replied to Qazi that I can't come to pay jizya in person. So if you send a person to collect jizya, I will hand over the amount to him. But the Qazi replied that no, it is not possible. And as a government official, you should follow all the protocols during the payment of jizya. And if collection of jizya without these regulations is not done, then it is haram, or it is not correct. Has completely, when the matter came to Subedar of Agra, he said, in the collection of jizya, which is a must according to Islamic rules of Sharia, and in Islamic state, the Qazi is the ultimate authority. So Diwan Murlidhar has to come himself and pay the amount of jizya. So this is one of the most glaring examples that jizya in practice was collected from every able-bodied Hindu, and no class of person other than the mentally ill or those who are actually poor are exempt from jizya. This petition of Hindu representatives in Mughal camp to Aurangzeb is dated November 1699. Now this is very interesting because in November 16, there was order of Aurangzeb in 1694 that Hindus, other than those who are serving in actual army, cannot carry arms, cannot use palaki, or cannot travel on the back of elephant, or use Iraqi or Ghaznavi horses. So when the campaign against Marathas started in November 1699, the last phase of 27 years war, the camp in charge of Aurangzeb's camp started confiscating the arms from all the Hindus who were present in the camp, because there was order of Aurangzeb in 1694 that apart from those who are actually campaigning, no Hindu is permitted to carry the arms. So this is a petition submitted by the Hindu representatives which were not on any campaign but were present in the camp of Aurangzeb, that we are humble servants of the king and we pay the jizya as per Sharia. This is a straight admission that nobles in the Hindu nobles in the army used to pay jizya, and these are all contemporary chronicles which are records which are present for any researcher. And they actually petitioned Aurangzeb that if you confiscate our arms, we cannot fight for you in this holy war. So please give us back our arms. That is a kind of desperation they are having. The next part is the myth that jizya was primarily collected and then used, collected from Hindus, but primarily used only for a charitable or religious purpose, or donations, or used as a Madadi Mash or state help. So this Akbar dated 22nd December 1701. It states that when Mughal camp was pitched near Vishalgarh in Maharashtra, Aurangzeb ordered to build fortifications around the fort, the post around the fort. And when the laborers, the merchants conveyed that laborers were not paid for past several months due to monetary issues, their salaries were paid from Khazana Jizya. Now, if Khazana Jizya is exclusively reserved for charitable purpose, then why the money was spent on the activities which are not concerned with religious purpose? These are all activities which were concerned with the war. So even if you study more court records, I'm sure many more such examples will come out. So even this particular assumption that jizya was particularly used for charitable purpose is also a myth. So these are primary ones. Of course, the book contains many more such distortions and their exposure with primary sources.
Sir, my question is that recently one political leader MIM visited Aurangzeb's tomb in Maharashtra. So still if a community associates itself with Aurangzeb and has problem with changing the name of Aurangzeb Road. My second question is, sir, that sometimes argument is given that one of the generals in Aurangzeb's army was a Hindu. Some generals Aurangzeb gave ranks to Hindu military generals. So how to counter such arguments?
Okay, actually, I think I covered that particular part in my earlier slides, that the data of Hindu nobles under Aurangzeb needs actually a thorough examination. And if you refer my book, there are plenty of examples. Like there is example of Mirza Raja Jai Singh is there, Raja Raghunath is there, then Maharaja Jashwant Singh is there. So they were promoted not for because of they were Hindu, but because they were useful in war. So, but they were definitely discriminated against because they were promoted in the by Dara Shikoh before the War of Succession, but Aurangzeb tried to take them out of equation by one way or the other. In when his throne becomes stable from the internal rebellions. So you can refer the book for more details. And what was your first question? Can you please repeat?
Sir, question was that still a section of Muslim associates itself with Aurangzeb and has problem with changing the name of Aurangzeb Road and visits the shrine of Aurangzeb. That was my objection.
See, basically that is the problem, fundamental problem with the Indian education, that there is a phrase called decolonization of mindset. Means we are independent, say from 1947, but our story of Indian civilization doesn't start from 1947. It starts way before. It may be even 5,000 or 10,000 years old. but then you have to choose to whom you want to associate it with. See, we can't change the mindset of every person, but yes, we can push our narrative more if proper sources are attributed and searched.
That's very true. And in fact, it's very unfortunate how repeatedly we have been taught the distortions, and it has been taught in a way that now they are ingrained in our mindsets, and it is really tough to go back and revisit things which we have been considering as facts since our childhood.
Exactly. Actually, it is a very interesting how to separate fact from a fiction, or how to separate fact from a distortion. It's a very tricky task.
It's a very
I
tricky task.
I have tried. Let reader decide how much I have succeeded.
Definitely. In fact, we are actually planning to have a talk on this topic as well. How we can actually create distinction and try to analyze by ourselves whether it's a fact or a distortion. So probably soon we'll be rolling out the talk in the newsletter.
Sure.
In fact, just to follow up on Saurav's question. So he was mentioning about the collaborators, probably the Hindu collaborators in Mughal army, and how they supported the Mughals basically. So I remember reading a tweet a few days back about Chikka. He was one of the servants of Aurangzeb, but I'm not really sure about the history associated with him much. So if you have something to add there, it would be really great for the audience members.
See, actually, Chikkadev Rai was not exactly you can call a servant, as far as I know. He was a king of Mysore, independent king of Mysore. But what used to happen is the Maratha area, the southern domains of Maratha area, which were around Jinchi, Tanjavur, and all, or the areas of Bangalore, Balapur, Chikbalapur, etc. They were looked as a threat from the Chikkadev Rai. So there was a campaign by Chhatrapati Sambhaji in 1682 in the Mysuru region to teach Chikkadev Rai a lesson. So when Chhatrapati Sambhaji was killed in 1689, probably Chikkadev Rai might have joined hands with Aurangzeb, thinking that as it is Marathas, it is a number of days that Marathas can now resist. So I will better join hands with Aurangzeb. That is one possibility, though I am not very sure about it.
Not more of a question, but just a feedback on the two impressive slides that I could see from Saurabh was one on the Banaras Farman, and the other was on the political resistance that he has in depth and done an analysis of that. So it's a really eye opener for at least for me. I couldn't get this perspective until and unless if somebody would have researched it in a detailed manner. And thanks to Saurabh for that presenting those kind of slides and giving us an eye opener.
We have studied history, and so first of all, why we are taught history, and why a second question, why we are taught mistorted history, and third, now we have facts and figures with this much source and evidences. Why it is not changed up until now, and any chances in the future? Why we should learn? Anyways, up to that 10th standard, every state in India, I am from the state of Kerala, every state in India, whether it is CBSE, ICSE or state syllabus, we are doomed to study history. We have no option. Why we are studying history?
See, why we are teaching history is something, unless and until you pass down a torch to a next generation, how they will remember the traditions, how they will remember what has been faced by their ancestors to preserve, protect the culture, the identity of the land. That is one essential point of studying history, because people will normally say that, oh, these events happened maybe 100 years back, 200 years back, 500 years back. What is the issue, or what we'll gain by studying those events right now? Now we have more important questions like petrol prices or prices of onions or this and that. But see, these are two unrelated things we are actually talking about. Means if you study history, then of course petrol prices are not going to come down. But if you don't study history, still petrol prices will remain the same only, no? So these are completely two unrelated events which are talking about. Actually, to discuss these arguments are basically to discourage people who are more curious to study the past. That is my personal opinion. The second one question was about the distortions. Like why so many distortions are there in particularly in Indian history. So as I said earlier, that we may have got independence in 1947, but the decolonization process has still not picked up the pace which it has to pick as soon as the country is free from the colonial masters. Now I think there are projects or various authors are coming out with their narratives. Even I could dare some of this because I feel that the time is right to come out with such narrative.
Yes, and just to add to that, in fact, recently Jay Sai Deepak has also written a book on the very narrative, like India, that is Constitutions. The name is the title of the book. So Abhinjay, if you haven't checked the book yet, it's a must read, and you should definitely buy it out. And also,
sorry, actually, I want to add one more point. If you're trying to look it as a biography of Aurangzeb, then it is not exactly a full biography. But basically, what I've done is jot down what are the distortions which are being pushed in the market. And then I started looking for the primary sources from where, what was the original narrative and how the distortions were started creeping in the narrative, and now what is being pushed. So to counter that, the distortion, let's go back to the primary sources and then expose the narrative with the help of those primary sources. So this is the methodology I approached while writing this particular book.
Oh, thank you very much. Saurav, thank you very much. You made a very beautiful presentation.
Thank you, sir.
I want to share one information, and then later I want to ask you a question also. The first information I want to share is that this is how the distorted history is being taught of children. Like during Corona times, my grandson was living with me. He's a student of Sri Ram College in Delhi, not Vasant Kund, that is the Malsari in Gurgaon. So there's a lady teacher by name Janani Iyer. So she was introducing Shivaji as a plunderer, and like Aurangzeb, benevolent. And then she was expressing why no lessons are included in the textbooks about Razia Sultana. And later I came to know, I checked up, and she's an MA in history from JNU. So this kind of, even today in 2022, this is being taught over children. And I told my daughter, when you go back to Delhi, go to Sri Ram School and take it up, fight with them. That's one. I mean, it's only an information I'm sharing with you, experience. And the other question is, I'm in little doubt about the imprisonment of Shahu Maharaj, that is one of the, I think, brothers or cousins of Sambhaji Maharaj. And whether Mata Jijabai was also imprisoned by Mughals at some point of time, and then was her husband, he was completely estranged and he stopped living with her and lived with some other wife. So these are all little confused information I have. If you can enlighten me on these couple of issues. I know Sambhaji Maharaj was killed, no doubt about that, but the rest of the things, there is no clarity on that. For me, there it may be, but for me, it's no clarity.
Thanks, sir. Actually, your first question was about imprisonment of Shahu Maharaj, right? Yeah. So Shahu Maharaj was son of Chhatrapati Sambhaji. He was not a brother, but he was a son of Chhatrapati Sambhaji. And when Chhatrapati Sambhaji Maharaj was killed in February 1689, and Raigad was captured somewhere around October 1689. Then Chhatrapati Sambhaji Maharaj's wife, her name was Yasubai and not Jizabai. Yasubai and Shahu Maharaj, who was then around 7 years old, both were made prisoner by Aurangzeb. And Shahu Maharaj was released from Mughal captivity in 1707 after the death of Aurangzeb. But Yasubai was kept in prison till 1719 to have some leverage over Shahu Maharaj by successive Mughal kings.
No, my question is, somewhere I read it. I'm not talking about Yasubai. I'm talking about Shivaji's mother Jijabai. Was she ever under the imprisonment of Mughals at any time? And the other one is her husband, Shahaji Maharaj, Shivaji's father. Was he estranged and lived separately away from her? That is he was employed by some sultans of Adil Shahi sultans of Bijapur, no?
See, there are actually two questions here. One part is whether Maharani Jizabai was ever under Mughal imprisonment or not, right?
Yeah.
So I'm not about very sure about this part, but there is book written by Mr. Shirish Gopal Deshpande on Shahaji Maharaj, in which this particular incident was noted that to have some leverage over Shahaji Maharaj, Mughals tried to actually kidnap Maharani Jizabai, but in her place, her sister-in-law was kidnapped. That is one part. And the second part about estrangement is not particularly true. Shahaji Maharaj, when they were in Nizam Shahi, and Nizam Shahi was means partition between Shah Jahan and Ali Adil Shah. Muhammad Adil Shah. And the part of that agreement was the young Nizam Shah will be taken care by Shah Jahan. But he advised Adil Shah not to keep Shahaji Maharaj in Maharashtra because the terrain, the topography of Maharashtra is suitable for guerrilla warfare. So he advised Adil Shah to transfer him to some distant place where there will be no popular support if he tries to counter the Mughal or Adil Shahi and try to become independent in near future. So the arrangement between Shahaji Maharaj and Maharani Jizabai was due to mutual understanding, and the older son, his name was also Sambhaji Maharaj, the older brother of Chhatrapati Shivaji, went with the Shahaji Maharaj to Bangalore, and the younger one, that is Chhatrapati Shivaji, he came to live in the Pune, which was also a fief of Shahaji Maharaj. So it was all part of a broader arrangement, and not some like trying to project as an estrangement or some issues between Shahaji Maharaj and Jizabai, etc.
Thank you.
Because if you see the history, the younger brother of Shivaji, Chhatrapati Shivaji, the Vyankoji, he also declared himself the king and founded the Tanjavur kingdom. If you know in the southern part of India, there is another small another kingdom known as Kingdom of Tanjavur, which was founded by Vyankoji Maharaj, who was a brother of Chhatrapati Shivaji. So these were all separate strands which came together to give resistance to the Mughals or Adil Shah, those who were called as invaders, and then started culminating in the having their own independent kingdoms.
Thank you. Namaste.
Thanks, Shrutiji, for giving me this opportunity to share my views on such a impressive platform.